Welcome to Birth at Work, the podcast where we dive into the real, unfiltered stories of what it's actually like to navigate pregnancy, birth, and early parenthood while building a career. I'm your host, Krislyn Powell. Each episode, we sit down with working parents who share their honest experiences, the victories, the setbacks, the moments of doubt, and the strategies that actually work. Because let's be honest, most workplace policies weren't designed with pregnancy and new parenthood in mind. And it's time we talked about what that really means for the millions of us trying to grow families while growing our careers. So today we have Angela Young. So excited for you to be here and join us on this podcast episode. Now, actually, these types of episodes are my favorite, where we bring on fellow working mothers who are in the trenches and can share a little bit about their stories and what it's really like to have kids and then also chase the career that you're passionate about and kind of the honest just experiences of juggling both of those things. Without further ado, Angela, can you tell us a little bit about you and why you're here?
So yes, I'm Angela. I've been working in research for over 10 years now, and I have my first child. He's going to turn 1 next week. I can't believe it. And so it's been a journey in the past year, and I'd love to share my experience if it's helpful for anyone.
Yeah, so exciting. Oh, coming up on that 1 year mark too. It's like such a momentous occasion. I remember with my first, and when that happened, I was like, it seems like it was a day that literally flew by.
Absolutely. No, it seriously went by so fast. He grows every single week. It's something new.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump in too. We're going to be kind of chatting a little bit about your experience with childbirth, with pregnancy, with also navigating kind of as he's grown up and so far, and kind of next steps, maybe your hopes for the future too. So, I do have a question to start us off, but one is just as far as like your vision for balancing work and motherhood. I think for all of us, it can be a little bit different when we actually maybe haven't experienced having kids yet. And the, I guess, expectation maybe versus reality is sometimes a little jarring. What was it like for you? And what did you expect motherhood to be while juggling work versus what it actually is?
Yeah, so I didn't really get a chance to see that growing up because my mom was a stay-at-home mom, which is really nice. So for some reason, I thought that there would be a lot more nap times or predictability with motherhood where I would be able to somehow fit in a reasonable amount of work and have minimal childcare. That's absolutely not the case. So it's a lot harder than I thought, but in a lot of ways, I've also seen myself grow in a new capacity. I see that I have the energy and time to do the things that I need to do.
It's incredible how the bandwidth actually does increase, albeit like there is a little bit of a reality check too that happens, right? So I appreciate that you shared that you had a stay-at-home mom because I actually did too. She worked prior to me being born, and then she actually with me I was her first, but she took time for leave and then went back to work. But then as my other siblings were being born, decided to stay home and raise the rest of the children until we were kind of like all in high school and beyond. And that was a really cool experience for me, but it did kind of influence what I expected motherhood and career to be like too. Just seeing like having that constant mother at home and experiencing that level of care, I thought I could do it all as well. Which is not the case, and it's okay to ask for help.
Right.
Yes. So also, just jumping into your pregnancy experience. So kind of starting back at square one, once you had the vision for it, your husband and yourself were ready to have a baby and you found out that you're pregnant. How did that work? Sharing that with your team and your supervisors, and were there any nerves that were involved when you decided to share? How did you approach that?
Luckily, I didn't have that many symptoms during any of my pregnancy, because if I did, I think I would definitely have had to share that with my supervisors and colleagues. So I had a really good pregnancy experience, but I was just definitely waiting till after the first trimester because I wasn't even telling extended family at that point, just waiting till it's a safer time to say. And then we had a pending promotion that was like a 6-month long process. And so it's something, not that me announcing it would have affected it because it was already in motion, but I felt like I shouldn't say anything until that was finalized. And then I did let them know, like almost instantly after they told me that the promotion went through, I did share with them the news. So I mean, they were very excited for me, and it was just, a lot of excitement around the board for both the promotion and then also me becoming a mother soon.
And I love that that happened kind of around a promotion time. And just in my personal experience, and then what I've been hearing from a lot of fellow, friends and colleagues who are also working mothers is that pregnancy can actually be like a really big growth experience. And a lot happens in life as well as the growing human that is happening too. So I think it's
Yes.
so cool.
Yes, it was a lot of when it rains, it pours. And in this case, it was all good news around.
That's good. Were there any other life occurrences that come to mind that popped up for you aside from the promotion at work and what was going on there?
I had decided to stay with my job. At first, I was looking for other positions. And then at the end of the day, when I was journaling and writing down, what I'm looking for in a job, ultimately I came to the conclusion that I wanted to be a mother. And that's more time sensitive than anything in my career. And so I wanted to prioritize motherhood. And so then I did make a commitment to staying in my job, and then letting my supervisors know that I was really committed and wanted to stay and take on a larger leadership role.
It's awesome. I love that. I saw something posted the other day just on social that was like it kind of hit home for me, but I just this topic top of mind being a mother, having kids, and then also working in career. Sometimes it can feel a little bit daunting as to which direction you should take in both avenues. And anyway, I saw this post that was kind of like, and I finally realized like I'm replaceable anywhere but here. And so having that mindset of, and the here was like she was holding her son, and just having that mindset of like this is priority, and also I can still welcome other opportunities and stick it out, but understanding that this is so important and it's time sensitive too. Like we don't get that time back.
Right. No, I love that perspective.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, were there any challenges or surprises that you encountered while you were working through your pregnancy? And if so, kind of walk us through what that looked like for you.
I said I didn't have any symptoms, but the main thing was being so tired in the first trimester. Like I would just randomly feel the need to sleep. And so luckily I did have a work from home job. And so I was able to take, a quick cat nap just to get re-energized. Another surprise was that two of my employees were also pregnant. So almost as soon as I announced my pregnancy, then one person shared that they were also pregnant. And then shortly after, another person shared that they were pregnant. 75% of my team was pregnant, which is just so unexpected, but exciting. It made planning for parental leave challenging, but it was cool that we all got to enter motherhood, around the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And then just backtracking a little bit too, I love what you said about just bringing up the fact that pregnancy can be exhausting, right? Again, we're growing a human and our body is changing a lot. You mentioned taking cat naps in the day. I just, a lot comes up for me with that and the conversation of like remote and flexible work and having the ability, if you have a responsible team member, you are a responsible employee, you get your work done and do quality work. You also should be trusted with the ability to set your schedule so that 15 minutes, 20 minutes here, like you can step away and take a re-energizing cat nap so that you can perform well for work. Yeah, so I just love that you mentioned that because that is the reality. I remember when I had a job that was, well, with the job that I was in during the majority of pregnancy was mostly in person. There was some remote days, but I remember like sleeping in my car sometimes
My
during
God.
lunch. That is not ideal, right? But then I did transfer to a remote role and it was just night and day and being able to build in time during meetings. And yeah, so I love that you brought that up. But also, my gosh, you had 75% of your team that announced pregnancy around the same time. And I just think, wow, like not only were you able to kind of like pioneer the way for other folks to feel comfortable sharing that news, but you also, if it wasn't enough that you had to navigate pregnancy on your own, then you were like managing other folks too, right? That were
Yes.
navigating the same thing. So what kind of reality trip was that for you to, have the experience of like having to plan out things with your supervisors, but then also working with other people on that and making sure that, the team's like tasks were covered, the leave was
Mhm.
all working out for everyone. What was that like?
Transparency was really important. Like the first employee who told me she was pregnant, I actually did bring up to her some performance issues I was seeing just because like I would just not hear from her or I was expecting something at a certain time. So then she did share like, "Hey, I'm having terrible morning sickness." And I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing that with me." So I think transparency through the pregnancy for all of us, kind of letting each other know, "Hey, today's not a great day for me, but I will get it done later." That was important for us to share the responsibilities and, let each other know where we're at. And then in terms of planning leave, I mean, it was so crazy because, I was planning to leave in May and then, the next person was going to have their baby in June. So she was going to take over some tasks for a little bit, but then it would have to transfer to the next person. And then by the time I came back, then the next person was going on parental leave. So it was just kind of like I don't know, a ping pong ball of like who was going to take over what. We had like a big board of all the different tasks that we do and, said who was going to shift, who was going to take on what and when. But yeah, it was a little bit crazy.
Like project management to a T, right?
Yeah.
Having to allocate everything. Also, transparency and the communication that you brought up too just really rings a bell. I think, whether you have one person on your team who's pregnant or 75% of your team, like you mentioned, is pregnant, it's key to be able to communicate that. Like, what bandwidth do you have? What are you able to take on? And then also have the responsibility and I guess a sense of just intentionality with like your calendar too, and being able to set proper boundaries there.
Hmm.
So huge that you brought that up. Also, just, as we kind of are closing in on this pregnancy section, initial news, and kind of navigating that, is there anything like any takeaways or advice outside of what you've already mentioned that you would share with other women who maybe it's their first right now, they just found out they're pregnant and they're like, how am I going to tell my work? How do I navigate this? Like, what does this mean for me and my career? What would you tell them in that moment?
I mean, I would tell them, wait till after the first trimester, of course, but then you technically have to tell them. I want to say it's only like 3 months or 4 months beforehand, but legally or something. But I would tell them to let them know. I would give your team ample time to plan for your leave, and so I think it's important to tell them, when you're comfortable, 4 or 5 or after, risks are minimized, just so that your team can plan strategically and that you can, figure out handoffs for all your projects, what can be tied up, what can be pushed back after your leave. I think, the work will get done. The work will always be there. And so I wouldn't stress so much about when you tell people. I think people will be very accepting to it and supportive.
Yeah, yeah, and I just have heard stories on both ends of the spectrum, and kind of what you're saying really resonates. I think you're approaching it in a really logical way of like do what's best for you in the time that you feel comfortable, but also think about the long-term effects that this has on your team and give them enough notice where they feel confident and capable to support you in your leave. It brings to mind a couple scenarios, but like one, when I was navigating my first pregnancy, I remember asking for advice from a senior leader, and she was like, I wouldn't go this route. For an example, where there was a woman who worked in office and she waited until like a month before and everyone knew she was pregnant, but she didn't tell anyone.
That's so awkward.
Yeah, like she was going to all of these meetings and everyone could clearly tell. And then, like, 4 weeks before she left, she decided to disclose. But so that was like, she's like, I wouldn't go that route, but take your time. Um, and then on the flip side, I recently have heard of like a CEO who decided to share pretty much as soon as she found out, which was like really early in the pregnancy, and just noticed how maybe that might have been too soon and had some ill effects on not necessarily her employees or staff, but it was like clientele that she was sharing that news with too. And just so early on in the pregnancy was like something that she would do differently, possibly. And also, she kind of wishes that the culture was different and more accepting. I think just something that comes to mind for me is like, what is the culture like in the company or organization that you're sharing the news with, and being sensitive about that?
Right, absolutely. And I think you brought up, clientele. Like I did wait like month or two, depending on how involved I was in the project, to let people know I was pregnant. and that,
Yeah.
when I was going to be on leave. But yeah, depending on, what your level of involvement is with client facing operations, you do have to give them a heads up as well.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like we wish it weren't necessarily so that that it's like such sensitive news that some people react differently to it, right? That they view it as maybe like an impediment or something that might be a detriment to the work. Like you said, the work is always going to be there. It's going to get done. Your team is capable of making sure that that happens. And so, I mean, we'll chat about this later in the conversation, but just something that I always continue to wish and work for moving forward is like we should be able to talk more openly about it. It should be something that's good news and embraced, and like knowing that we're all capable to lean in and that it's not something that stops a career, right? So
Absolutely.
awesome. So now, you've navigated pregnancy, sharing a little bit about that with whether it's supervisors, your team, your colleagues, and then let's just move into the kind of the journey where you're actually navigating parental leave. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about what that was like for you. I know that parental leave looks so different for so many people, and I think sometimes we can feel like a little guilty about taking time away, but at the same time, it's like it's not time off
It's
per
not.
se either. So if you're okay, I'd love to dig into this topic a little bit and ask you too, like, how did you prepare your team and your workplace for that leave and just make sure that you felt like they were good to go as you were heading out?
Yeah. So we were left with one person who was really holding down the fort, the one person who was not pregnant. So she took on so many responsibilities. And then we did end up hiring a temporary person who was thankfully able to stay on our team. But there was just no way that the work was going to get done with one person anchoring the whole operation. So we did put a lot on her. And in talking to my supervisors, I did feel so guilty for leaving this one person with so much on her plate. And so initially I had said, I think maybe I could go back to work 1 day a week after 1 month. And they said, don't think about your work. Like, what is going to be best for your family? This leave is meant for you. So don't think about what's going on. And so with that, then I did decide to take 3 months continuously. And now, like looking back, there was no way I could have gone back to work even 1 day a week at the 1 month mark. I was so sleep deprived. I was not feeling like myself. And so it was really important that I did take some leave, continuous leave up front to really spend with my family.
And how incredible that you had leaders that were willing to just be kind of straight up honest with you and so supportive that they were encouraging you to take that time that you needed, even though you were like, I need to get back as soon as possible. Sometimes we don't truly know how much time we need until we experience it. And so I think it's just so cool that you had those leaders that were there kind of advocating for you to do that.
Yeah. And what helped too was that, since so much of the team was pregnant, while before they gave birth, they were so willing to help in any way that they can. So everyone was pulling their weight where they could until they gave birth. And then when I came back, I was, working really hard to cover everyone else while they were on leave. So it was a lot of everyone just leaning in when they could.
Yeah, and having that realization too of like, okay, we're a team here. We all are taking leaves at kind of different times, and we need to be able to commit to supporting each other. What about returning for you? So you took the time away that you needed, and you mentioned that you had to support other folks while they were taking time away too, which is just, I mean, another testament to like how you lead. What was it like mentally as you prepared to return to work? I know that's like kind of a triggering point for some moms, as you've been bonding with your baby and now you're transitioning again. What was that like for you?
I kept thinking, how much do I actually need to work? Like, do I need to go back to full time? Could I come back for 30 hours or 20 hours? Because it just seems so overwhelming to go back to work and then also care for this baby, and also to not, I was with the baby 24/7. So it almost hurt to think about not being there, all the time with the babies. I really was thinking, like asking my husband, do we need me to work this much? Ultimately, I just decided to go back to full time. But there's so much calculation when you're looking at daycare costs and, also how you're feeling at that time, it seems like really hard to go back to work.
Yeah, and I think that's like a perspective shift too on what professional success means for you, right? In that moment. And just recognizing that like we live life in different phases and like what's important right now. Like, does that, is full time, does that make sense for me? You know, there's a term recently that's been coined in a book, which I'll link in the show notes, but that's it's called a power pause. It's like the just taking basically a little break from work to raise kids, to take the proper leave, and recognizing that's not going to be a detriment on your career, but just knowing like this time is truly like so short, and what does that mean for me right now? So I love that. And then as far as like the postpartum period too, and navigating some of that as I feel like postpartum, I've heard the phrase too, postpartum is forever, right? After you have a baby, so it kind of like never goes away. And then I don't think postpartum has to be a negative term either.
No.
But what were some challenges maybe as you were navigating that? And I still think of like me into the first year, heck, like first 2 years, my body was still changing. And what was that like for you as you were working again? And did anything come up that you felt like was unexpected?
See, luckily I didn't have like baby blues. When I returned to work at 3 months, that kind of resolved within 2 months or so. What was interesting to me is that going back to work actually made me feel a little bit more like myself. Like it gave me some kind of structure during my day, because when you're hanging out with the baby all day, there's zero structure. So I actually liked getting back to work postpartum. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, totally. When I was returning to, I felt the same way. It was kind of like, I don't know if this kind of comparison will resonate with you, but when I was a kid and we would go on summer break, I'd be so excited for summer break, right? And all of the activities, it wasn't really ever a break for my parents or myself. It was like they were just different activities that were happening during those months. But we did like swim team and we had camps and different things and went on vacations. And during that time, like life looked differently. And then right before I started school, it was like, I cannot wait to go back to school. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know.
it
Yeah,
did
did
feel.
you ever feel the same?
No, I do feel that. I also, during summer breaks, I would always think I'm going to get so much done. With postpartum, I didn't hardly got any of my bucket list done that I thought I was going to do.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's like thought I would read all the books, the house would be super clean. None of that was a reality.
No.
Lots of breastfeeding, lots of resting, lots of family time.
Yes.
Awesome. I truly amazing just so far, like what you've shared. And now as we're kind of getting into the weeds on your work and life balance and, being psyched to go back, having that like experience of, okay, work is actually, intriguing for me. It's going to be a cool part of my day to have my career back. Not that it ever left, but just like having that in your rhythm and your day to day. What did work-life balance look like for you when maybe you started back at leave? I think you mentioned that your leave, like you took the 3 months concurrent and then there were some other opportunities that you had to take additional time. So what did that balance look like? How did you integrate it? Especially, as your son's turning 1, like over this past first year.
Yeah. So we were really fortunate in that I had 24 weeks of leave and my husband had 12 weeks of leave. So we staggered it. So once I went back to work, I was going back 3 days a week. And then most recently, I've ramped it up to 4 days a week. Leave ends next week. But it's been nice because then my husband watches him 2 days a week and then my parents watch him a day a week. And so we haven't had to put him in daycare for this first year, which has been so nice to have him at home, to be around for the little moments. Yeah, I just feel really fortunate that was able to ease back into work. I can't quite imagine jumping straight into 3 months of leave and then you're back to work at full time. It was nice to be able to slowly work my way back.
Smart of you too, because I feel like having that approach, you were able to more fully show up for your colleagues as well. So that when you were there, and I think kind of, as we were going back and forth with some of these questions and talking about the conversation, it was like you were saying that you've noticed your capacity to be more efficient in those days as well, even though they're like the limited time that you have has allowed you to get more done.
Yes, absolutely. I easily think that I'm doing my full-time work in the 3 or 4 days that I'm working. I'm just better able to prioritize things and get into more of a flow state really quickly. I don't idle or I can't, there's no time to procrastinate. And so I just feel like a much more efficient worker. Not that I wasn't efficient before, but I have to be.
And it's funny, I see like all of these productivity hacks, right? Like I don't know if you've heard of the Pomodoro method, which I've tried in the past too. It's like you spend 20 minutes on a task, take a short break, 20 minutes on a task, take a short break, but it's like focused, basically increments. But I'm also kind of like, well, productivity hack for me is I'm a mom. Like I know
Yes,
how to prioritize.
right. When it's nap time, it's amazing what you can get done.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like you give me an hour or two, I will run the world. Okay, awesome. I'm also curious too, as you have navigated transition back, I love that you mentioned the staggered schedule, being able to show up fully in that way, and then kind of like ease back into the transition a little bit better. Were there any boundaries that came up for you that you had to set, whether that be with family or coworkers, as you were transitioning through postpartum and coming back from leave? Did anything come up for you where you kind of had like a realization, oh, I need to address this, or maybe I need to like shift some things on my calendar, or have this conversation with someone? What did that look like for you? Any boundary setting?
Let people know what my childcare situation looks like. Like when I do go to my parents' house, have him take the first nap here and then I head over after. So my workday might start whenever he goes down for a nap. And so I'm very transparent. Like I don't set any meetings during this time. I do get my work done. It just is dependent on his schedule. So letting people know, yes, I'm most free on these days. So I kind of had a better schedule of when I was available and willing to take meetings. So I just limited that and I just stacked up all my meetings on certain days when I knew I had full-time childcare. I think that helped a lot with my efficiency because it's the worst when you have like meetings every hour or so peppered through your calendar. It's like so much better for me to just get it all done.
That is another like productivity hack, is like those focus days with like meeting blocks where you will have available time. And instead of, I see some calendars where it's like meetings are so sporadic all over the place. And I think that leads into the conversation of like, what does the culture look like at your organization? What does the leadership look like? Do they advocate for like focus days where or no meeting blocks? And how do you have the freedom to communicate that? So did you feel like alongside that you had the support of your leadership and other team members that you were able to articulate, like kind of I control my calendar, this is when I'm available? Or did you feel like there was any sort of, I guess, maybe like any sort of navigation bumps that you had along the way where you had to advocate for it?
Luckily, most people knew that I was on some kind of parental leave. And so they just kind of took like, this is her availability, this is when we'll meet. And so it was good that everyone was really flexible in that way. I also think even if you don't have kids, you can be strategic with those meeting blocks and things like that, just because it's so hard when you have so many meetings peppered throughout.
I like that you brought up the importance too of like the calendar blocking. You can do that when you're not a working parent as well. And just that, like, I see calendar blocks on team members' calendars where they're like, I'm going to be at the gym, during this time. Like, this is my morning time. Do not schedule a meeting. And similarly, like, I have some afternoon time where I'm like, this is my preschool pickup time. Like, I will
Mm-hmm.
not be taking meetings.
Yep.
Very cool. So, talking a little bit about like your career and also any perspective shifts that you've had, how has becoming a mother impacted any decisions, professional goals, or even like kind of changed the way that you view workplace culture?
Okay. I definitely want flexibility and stability, and that is definitely afforded in my current position. I do have more professional goals. I do think I'm kind of a little bit at the ceiling for my current job, but I'm also like learning so much as a mother. It's so unpredictable. It's a learning curve in itself. And so I'm not really wanting to also have a huge professional learning curve as well. So I'm happy to, I feel like my job's rewarding enough where, it makes sense for me to stay and it works for my schedule. I don't I'm not prioritizing the professional aspirations as much as I am about just being here and present for my child.
Such an important perspective to have too. Again, just like this is time that you won't get back, and being in those moments and recognizing what's important and where you can navigate your career moving forward. I am curious too, as far as any misconceptions that sometimes pop up in the workplace regarding working mothers or working parents. Is there anything that you wish, that you've heard or seen or had friends navigate that you just kind of wish would disappear in our current culture today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people think, or some people have treated parental leave as if it is vacation, and it's definitely not. There's no aspect of it that feels like vacation. Like you're so sleep deprived, you're healing. So it's not a vacation. And so when I got back, people said, "Oh, I hope that you had such a relaxing time with your baby." And I'm thinking, yeah, no, it wasn't relaxing.
Like you don't know the half of it.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's a lot, from friends who have said, when they've told their supervisors that they're having a baby, there's a lot of talk about, well, are you going to come back? I mean, you can't ask that. You're not supposed to ask that, but just an assumption that people aren't going to come back after they have a baby.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely have heard both of those sides of the coin of like, yeah, I had like clients and things like that say, enjoy your time away, like enjoy your kind of like vacation. And then on the flip side too, like team members just confirming like you'll be back, right? And it's
Right.
like, well, legally, I don't think you're allowed to like ask me that, but
Definitely not.
also, yeah, like I have every intention to come back. On the flip side, so you mentioned like, okay, these are the things I wish would just disappear. What are ideal family-friendly workplace policies you love, appreciate, or want to see come to fruition?
I think COVID has allowed so much more flexibility in like flexible spaces to work, flexible schedules. And so I think that's paved the way for working parents and being able to carve out time that they need for their family or for pickup. It's normal to work a lot in the early morning while the kids asleep or after they go to bed. People know that we can be very effective as remote workers. And so I think that's super helpful for new parents or parents.
Yeah, 100%. Remote work has changed the game for me and my husband as well. And I think for many parents, and I'm so glad that you're able to experience that. I also am curious as far as your hope for the future. So what else do you hope for future working parents? I know we talked about like specific workplace policies, but maybe some of this hope could look like perspective shifts for them or changes in how their family dynamics are approached or and just how society views things. But what would be something that you hope for the future? Something that maybe you're working towards or you really want to see a societal shift?
Yeah. Well, with more working moms or, where both parents are working, I'm seeing or hoping for, more equitable division of childcare and household tasks. I know I've seen that with my husband and I, where I communicate what I need. Like he's in charge of the bottles. I don't want to do any of the, bottle dishes because I already have to pump. That's enough work as it is.
Yeah.
He has had to care for him, full time on the days where I'm working. And it's so different being a weekend parent than being the parent who's watching him all day while I work and then I cook dinner, watching him for 12 hours at a time. So I think it gives dads a whole new perspective and appreciation for working moms and then also gives them a lot of time to bond with their child.
Yeah, it's so impactful too that you're bringing in dads into the conversation and kind of parental roles and what that looks like and being able to communicate like, okay, not only am I working full time, like feeding the baby and also working full time in a job like my career, but these are some things that like would be really helpful for me if you took these on and they can take those tasks on with pride and lean in the right ways so that the household continues to function. It's not like all on the mother to do everything because we can't possibly do everything.
No, there's no way.
Yeah. Okay, so as we're closing the conversation, This is probably the most impactful question that I have for you. And it's also really going to resonate with me. I wanted to make this conversation mainly about you and your experience, but I do also want to share with you that I am pregnant right now. So,
Wow.
yes,
How
so
far along?
excited. I am about to go into my third trimester. So,
Okay.
yes, so it's coming up quick, nesting, doing all of the things, like rearranging the house, getting things ready, taking the classes. My other, son is about 3.5, so he's very excited to be a big brother, and he's in a very hopeful phase, so it's like perfect timing for us. But just being in this mindset and, navigating this experience all over again and, about to go into it, I'm curious what one piece of advice you would give to a mother returning to work and also, maybe about to go into having her baby, right? So you could kind of, maybe it's like two pieces of advice, right? But what
Yeah.
would you leave? What would you leave a working mother with as they're about to have this experience that you have just navigated over, really, I guess it's been the past 2 years for you because it's almost a full year of like being pregnant and having a baby and then a year with your son turning 1. So yeah, I'd love to hear any advice that you have for me, for other working moms as well.
Yeah, I think if you can be strategic with your leave time, if there's any way that you can slowly transition back to work, either like going back part-time or using some of your leave to so that you can go back part-time, I think that's so important to have that transition period back into work. I mean, even though you've been through going back to work and having a child, it's going to be a whole new dynamic having two children. So I do think having a transition time back to work would be really helpful. The other is to accept and ask for help. I think this was really hard for me because I'm not really a good person at asking for help or delegating things, in my professional and my personal life. And so leaning into whatever support systems you have or like with your husband, asking for help when you need it, asking for help with the nighttime feedings or whatever challenges there are, even if it's just moral support.
I love that. Thank you so much. I also, you know, before we close, want to ask if there's anything else that came up for you, maybe any questions that we didn't hit on or anything else that you want to share. I always want to kind of leave this time open for you to lean in if there's something else you want to talk about.
I don't know if this is super relevant, but one of the main challenges we had with my kid was that he refused the bottle. And so if he had had to go to a normal daycare, I don't know how we would have navigated that situation because he only wanted to exclusively breastfeed. And so I guess maybe a piece of advice would be to moms, make sure that they can take a bottle if you are planning to go back to work and you won't be able to exclusively breastfeed because that was a huge mistake that I made.
Yeah, well, I mean, not necessarily a mistake, right? Like it was an experience that you had that you realized, oh, snap, he's rejecting the bottle. This can happen, but so I wouldn't be too hard on yourself there. But yeah, there was a whole thing, a whole navigation that I had with my first and navigating breast and bottle and what that looked like in the feeding situation. And yeah, I think there's that dynamic. So bringing that to light and sharing that challenge openly with other moms is huge. So I'm glad that you brought that up to make sure that we didn't miss talking about that. It's like the feeding dynamic is just, I think, something that so many folks don't realize how time heavy of an investment it is and how important it is because that's how they grow.
Yes.
So awesome. Thank you, Angela. I, again, just so glad that we got to have this conversation. I admire the way that you've navigated your career and having a baby, raising your son. He's turning 1, so exciting. It's just been a pleasure talking with you. And I think not only myself, but other moms are really going to appreciate hearing your story and learning from you. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much and congratulations. Thank you for sharing that news with me.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Birth at Work. If our topic resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on social or via email. Your experiences and questions help shape future episodes. Remember, you're not alone in this journey of balancing career and family. Every challenge you're facing, someone else has navigated too, and every victory you celebrate, big or small, deserves to be recognized. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. It helps other working parents find these conversations when they need them the most. And if you know someone who could benefit from hearing these stories, please share this episode with them. Until next time, Remember, you don't have to choose between your career dreams and your family dreams. You're already proving that every day. Thanks for listening to Birth at Work. I'm Kristlyn Powell, and I'll see you next time.